Welcome to Alienating the Audience. When other shows are running from zombies, we're playing D&D with them. I'm your host, Andrew Heaton, the thinking man's nerd. Hey, so this week, it turns out we're all living in bunkers and hazmat suits because of COVID-19, which has me thinking about pandemics, because it is one, which has me thinking about zombies, the ultimate tale of scary infections. So today, we're going to review the book that kicked off the entire zombie genre, Day of the Triffids. In my opinion, the very first modern zombie book. Now don't worry, if you haven't read it, my guest Jennings and I are going to focus on the underlying themes of the novel and of zombie novels as an entire genre. So while you might feel compelled to read it afterwards, you'll enjoy the show regardless of the level of familiarity you have with the text. Following the discussion, Nick Sperduti and I will not tell you about our recent comedy shenanigans on other planets, because all of our comedy gigs have been canceled, and we are currently trapped in his 2-bedroom New York apartment under quarantine. But we'll provide you with an update of our situation all the same. Grab a shotgun and a garden trowel, because we're about to get botanical, British, and dystopic. All right, first inaugural Interstellar Book Club with my friend and producer emeritus, J.M. Jennings. Jennings, how are you?
I'm doing well, Heaton. How are you?
Pretty good. So you and I are the first members of the Interstellar Book Club, since I've not actually opened it up to anybody at the time we're recording this.
Yeah, it's a little empty in here.
Yeah, well, but on the upshot, 100% of the people participating have read the book.
That is true.
Which is markedly different than every other book club I've been in.
Maybe every other book club in the world.
Yeah. And I usually just show up to socialize, and then everybody gets mad because I forgot to read the book.
Yeah.
And then I hit on the wife or the guy that threw the book club thing. Anyway.
Who really wants to finish Eat, Pray, Love?
Right. Thank you. Exactly. When we could be reading the very first zombie novel.
Is it, though?
Is it, though? Indeed. We'll get into that. So the book we're discussing today is The Day of the Triffids by John Wyndham. Or Wyndham?
Wyndham.
Wow, I was wrong on all counts.
You were close.
This is militating against my thesis. It's militating against my authority to declare this the first zombie book.
And against your claim that you've read the book.
Yeah. Okay. Actually, I'll say this. When you start reading stuff on Kindle, you forget the title and the author. Have you noticed that?
I don't know, because I don't really read on Kindle. Okay, I wish I did. I'm sure I would be able to get through a lot more
buddy.
books.
I think someday you'll be earning enough money to buy one of them fancy ebook readers.
I just can't. I haven't been able to get into them.
I'm actually coming back around. I like reading nonfiction on them, because if I'm doing an interview or something, I want to be able to highlight it and do all of that. But I'm coming back around to, like, if I'm reading sci-fi, I like reading it on the paperback format.
You do know they make analog highlighters.
What?
Just highlighter for a book.
Yeah. But when I inevitably forget the book at home and I need to look it up online, then it works better if it's if it's digital. But when you're reading them in terms of Kindles, like you don't see the cover all the time, and so you forget the name. Like there are
that's a really good point.
There are books that I love that I'm like, I can't remember what it's called or who wrote it, but I really like the book. So anyway, that or it's just my brain deteriorating.
That's a possibility as well.
It could be both. But anyway, the book that we picked was The Day of the Triffids, which I read at your suggestion last year about this time.
Yep.
It's actually wonderful full circle for you and I, because you also introduced me to zombies.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, that was because you think way back to...
Wow, that was a long time ago.
I'm gonna tip the deck right now. If anybody were hanging out with us in your apartment, because currently Heaton Studios are being renovated.
Yes.
And so we're recording this out of Jennings' apartment. We didn't have any sound absorbent material, so we've taken every single upright chair he has and slung a blanket over it, and it looks like we've made the crappiest fort to have a little party in, like a little 8th grade party in. Or I don't know, 8-year-old party. I don't know.
I'll post a picture in the orphanarium of what my apartment looks like when it's been studioified.
Nice. But yeah, when we were in college, you invited me over and we watched Dawn of the Dead, which remains my favorite zombie film. And
right.
And then later on, you and I had we were talking about something that we discussed many times before, almost certainly women, given that we were in college, and I don't know what else we would have spoken about multiple times. And you went, let's talk about something else. What would you do if zombies invaded campus? And thus kicked off a wonderful diversion for us for a good 5 years.
We actually, for the first probably 6 months of that series of discussions, would take long walks around the OU campus, where we would talk about like the pros and cons of different different strategies that we'd come up with over the past few days since we'd last seen each other, and this
was a very worthwhile use of our time instead of going to class.
It was. Yeah. It also might have had something to do with the reason why we were constantly talking about women instead of actually hanging out with women.
But on the upshot, we did. Well, you know what? Anyway, I'll get back to the thing we're talking about, which is the Day of the Triffids.
Yes.
So I'll tell you the first thing that struck me about this when I started preparing for this is I had no idea it was written in 1951.
Really?
When I read it last year at your suggestion, I thought it came out maybe 5 years ago, 6 years ago.
Wow.
Because I never heard of it.
Right.
So I just assumed it was new. It turns out there are many books that I've not heard of. Yeah. But more to the credit of John
Wyndham.
Gosh, Wyndham. I'm going to make a note. John Wyndham. More to his credit, the book held up. I did not feel that it was out. The only thing that would have been dated to it is that there are no smartphones.
Right.
But that said, though, I mean, a lot of books are set pre-smartphones even now that are written in a lot of series and that kind of thing.
Right. Well, and I think also, I mean, you have to bear in mind this is the entire book takes place in England and is written by an English author as an English character in English.
Yeah.
And so the sort of pine cone up the butt quality of English prose probably keeps it from dating itself too quickly.
That's true. It's always fully English. But I really enjoyed it. Can you walk us through? So because it's been out since 1951, I feel like everybody's had an adequate amount of time to try and read this book.
Yeah.
And if you're listening to this and you haven't read the book and you want to, I give you full permission to pause the podcast for 1 to 3 weeks, no more than that.
Right.
And then resume the podcast. So pause now. And you're back. So, all right, that now being out of the way, can you kind of walk us through the general plot of the book?
Yeah, and before I do, really quickly, I'll just say my own experience with the book almost didn't happen. There was a terrible, terrible film adaptation of it in the early 60s, which I came across maybe with Mystery Science Theater 3000.
Could be. Sounds like very ripe terrain for them.
It was just horrible, horrible film. And so when I encountered the book years later, I really only picked it up just out of amusement. And I thought, I'll read a page or two of this. It will be as terrible as the film.
You were going to scoff read?
Yes. Yes.
You were going to sit on the toilet and chortle at the
Which, if you think about it, is a very English thing to do.
Also, a lot of people don't know that's actually their national pastime. We have baseball and they have scoff reading.
Scoff reading. So I picked it up and I was a few pages into it and I was hooked. So anyway, the story is that there's a new species of plant called the Triffid, and it is it's a large 7 to 9 foot tall plant that is carnivorous, and it can actually walk after a fashion. It can uproot itself from the ground and is able to move across the ground. And it is deathly poisonous to human beings. It has a kind of a sting that's on a long arm, and if it reaches out and slaps that sting against you, you will die pretty much instantly if it gets you directly. So our narrator is a biologist who has studied these things because they're also incredibly valuable because they produce a vegetable oil that is both nutritious when it's put into food and supplements, and also works as a great petroleum substitute. And so he's a member of a team of people who farm them. A few years after the discovery of these Triffids, which seem to have cropped up all over the world basically overnight, the subtext is that the Soviets created them basically in a lab and they got out, sort of.
Can I interrupt you there? Does he clarify that? Because I feel like at the end of the book, the main character sort of openly speculating, and he's like, it feels like this was coordinated, and he kind of thought it was a Cold War thing. But up until that point, and even then, it's still that one character speculation. I was like, could be alien invasion.
Right. I don't think that I don't think it's ever that part. The Triffid part is I don't think the character speculates that the Triffids were released on purpose. I think the character lines out that probably they were released on accident. Right. There was a plane
like a Soviet
shot down over the ocean,
bioterrorism type thing.
And the billions of seeds. Yeah,
he actually does do that, doesn't he? Because he talks about some Russian plane that accidentally goes down or something like that.
Yeah, and that's probably where it was in the in the upper atmosphere, and these seeds floated very slowly down and disseminated with the winds and such all around the planet, and so they crop up everywhere, and they begin to be a nuisance. But as soon as people discover how to deal with them, they can
which is easy enough if we're all not blind,
right?
Because all you got to do is like cut out the flingy
top
bit,
of it,
and then it's just going to try and like muzzle you. You've got like a very affectionate plant.
Yes, as long as you have working eyes and you can see it coming, you're fine. Yeah. So that's the end of the book. Yep. Thanks, guys. No, of course it's not, because a few years after the discovery of the Triffids, supposedly Earth passes through a meteor shower. Or no, Earth does pass through a meteor shower, and after a couple of days of meteors that everybody goes out and looks up into the sky to see, everyone in the world wakes up the next morning, like 2 or 3 days later, blind, all at once around the planet. There are people who are not blind because they didn't see the meteor shower.
So I'll pause you there. First, and he doesn't cover this in the book, because the protagonist, through, I believe, an accident with Triffids, was sort of temporarily, he wasn't blinded, but basically he had an eye injury.
Right.
So that he recalls sitting in the hospital room.
Yeah.
And the nurses like hearing whizzing noises, and the nurses are going, "Oh, that was a big one," right?
Yeah.
So he's spared. But I'm wondering, do you think, did everybody just wake up blind, or like some guys flying airplanes, and it's just like, oh crap, like it's going gray, or like, because I suspect it's not an instantaneous thing, but I don't know.
Right. It seems to be that it was a cumulative thing. Whether I don't think it's ever really fully answered, because
I guess
he comes into contact with comparatively few people.
Right. And it's also like, I suppose if you and I were in this situation, we would not be marveling at the speed at which it happened. We would be marveling that it happened.
Right.
Like, it wouldn't be like, oh, I woke up blind. It would be like, or oh, really? That was your experience? Because mine went over a period of 3 to 5 hours. Anyway, let's go get some soup. Oh, wait, we're blind.
Blind.
Everyone else in the world is blind. Another thing I was thinking about in preparation for this is, who would be spared from this? So he doesn't really do. There are a few characters that are spared from it. So we know Bill Mason, who's the protagonist,
right?
The biologist you mentioned. He had an eye injury. He's spared from this. Wilfred Coker, who is the kind of ethical rogue that we will encounter later on.
Right.
He's the heart of gold kind of. I don't know how to describe him. He's what would he be? He would be good chaotic.
Yeah.
Chaotic good.
He's definitely the Han Solo type.
Right.
Yeah. By the way.
But British.
Seriously, anyone listening to this, if you haven't read this book, there will be a ton of spoilers in this book, in this podcast. Please do yourself a favor and go read this book first. It is worth it.
It might save your life.
It might save your life.
Yep.
But it's worth it from even just enjoying pure speculative fiction perspective. It's one of the best science fiction books I've ever read, and I think you would agree.
Yeah, and I'd also say, like, if we want to even include that to being like a sci-fi horror axis, I would put it up there,
absolutely.
Like top 5.
I mean, because this is essentially a zombie story.
Yeah.
Which you alluded to earlier. Really quickly, before we get to your question, let me just quickly finish summarizing.
Sure.
So our main character, Bill, wakes up, and he is able to see. He comes into contact with a number of people throughout the book who are also able to see. And of course, hordes and hordes of people who are not able to see. London very quickly devolves into just a chaotic mess of people who are starving to death, who are violent, who are trying to to find help. If they can capture a sighted person, they will, and they'll sometimes even chain them up. The female lead in the book, Josella, is in that
Josella
situation.
Playton.
Yes,
I took notes.
You got that one right.
Yep.
So the book then sort of turns into a meditation on how best to go about saving humanity, and of course there's the usual sort of daring do and action-y bits and so forth. Again, I don't know how far you want to spoil the ending.
I think we can go fully on it. And I'll add that it being British, there's a lot of meetings.
Yes.
There's a lot of council meetings where they discuss.
Yes. A ton of that. And
but I got to say, they're entertaining. It's not like it's not like a series of minutes.
They definitely are.
It's just there's a procedural British element that I find amusing.
There is nothing. Yeah, this book will apply Britishness to literally everything. There is a moment where the main character and Bill and Josella, who will end up together. They end up as man and wife. They have children together. Early on in their acquaintance, there is a moment where they are literally discussing sex, and it is so uptight and British that nothing.
I suppose we could have an orgasm.
Yes.
Well, with us having so few people left with sight, would you be all right with that? Well, yes, I'd be fine being your wife and having an orgasm. Yeah. It's very
As long as said orgasm is only achieved in the effort to raise children, so that we may once again have a sighted world.
This being 1951, it might be horror sci-fi porn.
Yeah.
This might have been that conversation about getting married might have qualified as like the 50 Shades of Grey of the era.
Okay.
Banning it from school and whatnot.
Was it the Family Guy that did the British porn where he's like, "Oh God, I've arrived."
Yep.
So anyway, So that's the basic rundown of it, and they do end up. There's a period of time where Bill and Josella are separated because of sort of warring gangs that kidnap her and him, and they eventually end up together again, and they discover this Coker fellow who
feller would be if we said it in Kentucky,
right? This Coker feller who came back for him, and everyone ends up in the end on the Isle of Wight, which is where they are the most safe from the Triffids, while they begin to develop a way to combat them and wipe them off the face of the earth. And that's sort of where the book ends up.
Yeah, and it ends on a positive but unfinished note.
Definitely.
It is not like in the you and I were talking before discussing the episode that I think the BBC's done actually a movie and a miniseries at some point. Really? But the movie you referenced, which I've not seen, they did in the 60s, the end of it, which is so 50s, 60s hacky, is they go, "Oh, we figured it out. They can't handle salt water." And and it's like, oh yes, stupid Triffids going to a planet composed 80% or whatever it is, 3/4 salt water, which they used to do in the 50s all the time. Like there'd be like these giant walking leeches, and the scientists, everyone's going to die, and then the scientists realize, potassium. Right. And I have no idea why this was a thing, because it's such a stupid cop-out.
I have a theory on that. I think that is mostly a throwback or at least a nod to H.G. Wells, because if you'll recall in the what is the War of the Worlds,
which was an influence on this very book.
Yes, when in the War of the Worlds, I mean, the outcome of that is pretty dire for humanity until they discover that is it water? No, it's not water.
No, it's biocontaminants. Yeah, it's basically
the common cold.
In War of the Worlds, if you're a human and you can just not die in the first 72 hours, your germs will do it. Which is not only is that a fascinating thing, it's also something never covered again in any other work of science fiction that I'm aware of.
No, you know what I was thinking of? It wasn't War of the Worlds. And this wouldn't have worked in terms of Wyndham being.
Oh, you think it'd be the Andromeda Strain?
No, I was thinking of
because the Andromeda Strain is something like that, right?
No, I was thinking of the film, the M. Night Shyamalan film Signs, where the aliens are susceptible to water. Yeah. That's what I was actually thinking.
Okay,
so all of those people in the 50s saw...
all psychic.
They were all psychic. They all saw that was one day going to be a film. And they were like, we're going to capitalize on that now.
They had a lot more Ouija boards back in the 50s.
People did.
Appreciate that. So I'll go back to, I was thinking about this earlier today, a couple of like, when the proverbial scat hits the fan, that moment, who all would be spared from this? Because he does talk a little bit about him, but I don't think he pegs any group. He rather has the individuals, right?
Right.
So, like, I'm thinking in the people that would potentially be spared from the blindness of the green meteors would be anybody on a submarine. Presumably not every submarine. Like, I can't imagine that the captain of a submarine calls the base and is like, hey, Admiral, the guys really want to watch the Pleiades shower. And, like, it's been a tough week. Because the submarine's hamster died. No, they have to stay underwater, right? Anybody involved in like a nuclear base, probably same thing. They're in underground bases. This is the 50s. There are absolutely secret nuclear bunkers across Britain. I actually got to do a tour of what is now called the secret Scottish nuclear bunker, but I don't think should be because it's not.
That sounds amazing.
It's really cool and really grim, super grim. Like they like the end of the tour is like, and like this is the final room. And basically they could accommodate like 300 soldiers plus the royal family if they were visiting.
Oh wow!
For a month and a half, and then they would determine whether or not it was worth going out or they'd shoot themselves. A very there's not a lot of frills there. But anyway, those people would presumably have been cited, right? They would have maintained it. And I'm also thinking like guys in prison might very well have been able to escape this. Although they might be stuck in there. There's no guarantee.
Yeah, they would have all starved to death.
Yeah, and unless some guy was able to get out and he was altruistic enough, like he could reach over while the guard is fumbling, gets the keys, and lets himself out.
Right.
But I don't think there's anything quite like that in the book. There's not a moment where it's more of a Walking Dead type thing,
right?
Where you would have like the story of this group versus the story of that group.
Yeah, and I did think that it would make for a very interesting furtherance of the story. Somebody could easily come along and, I mean, it would be fan fiction, but the idea would be to pick up that story from various different places around the world and see what was going on with different groups. Who would have been spared beyond the groups you've mentioned in the 50s is a really good question. I think it's worth mentioning, by the way, that the blind people are spared.
Very
because
much so.
He encounters one naturally blind person, and that person doesn't even ask him for help, but is
he just laughs and swears off.
Yeah, he's like,
my world now.
I'll be on about my merry way.
Yeah.
So that's blind people are definitely going to be fine. I mean, anybody who didn't care about the meteor shower, there's got to be a number of people who are like, I got to be at work in the morning.
I mean, if I don't want to. I miss the Pleiades every single year. I forget every single time.
I do too.
And it's mentioned, I assume, in the newspaper and on Twitter and stuff. And that's
why we can still see my friend.
Yeah, exactly. I'm either asleep or drunk by the time it happens, and so have no idea that I've missed it yet again. So there would have been a decent amount, but I think we can assume reasonably that less than 10% of people in Britain have been spared from this fate. The other thing I was thinking about is let's say the Triffids aren't even a part of this. This is just the story of 90% of humanity going blind, or 95%. And I was like, you know what? Yeah, everybody would be screwed. That would it's one thing to have a very able person that can navigate a sighted world, admirable and competent and everything else, but the Pentagon did some simulations actually right before 9/11. In fact, they produced the paper on September 10th, 2001, and it was on EMPs. And their prediction, if an EMP went off in the United States, without even killing people through an explosion, but just punching a hole through the stratosphere, allowing radio waves to come in and fry up circuits.
Right.
And it was a staggering amount of loss of life. It was
for sure.
It was 80% of the American public would be dead within 2 years, just because without anybody even being immediately killed, if all of the computer technology is knocked out, there would just be no way to logistically coordinate everything to get everything everywhere. And you think about we could, everybody would just march towards Kansas. Maybe, but how many of those people need insulin that are going to drop dead along the way?
Oh, for sure. Not only that, but we're in the middle of Dallas right now.
Yeah.
How far do you think the closest farm is to here? And if we made it to that farm, what's to say that any food would actually be readily available at that farm right now?
Yeah.
It would be mass chaos, which is why everybody should be prepared. Be preppers. Yeah.
And I think you take that on like the blindness level. I'm like, well, now you've got an even more magnified problem than that. This would be far worse than an EMP.
Oh, yeah.
Because you can't even write stuff down now, right? There is a very tiny, a fractured amount of people that are able to look. Like if he hadn't introduced walking tripedal carnivorous plants, it still would be a like apocalyptic story.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
But as it is, they go through that. And incidentally, on the note of the apocalypse, in the same way that this was influenced by War of the Worlds, this also directly influenced 28 Days Later.
Right.
Have you joined me on my theory that this is the first zombie book? Are you contesting that it's a zombie book or that it's the first?
I'm definitely not contesting that it's a zombie book.
Okay.
However, I'm not sure if it's the first. It's a hard thing to quantify. Some people say that Mary Shelley's Frankenstein is the first zombie book.
Okay. Okay. All right. It's a conscientious zombie or a conscious zombie, but
sure.
Yes, it is a zombie. It's a reanimated corpse.
So I don't know. But
I will posit that the other one that I think would be less culturally significant, but nonetheless a footnote, is The Magical Island, which came out in 1929.
Yeah.
Which is kind of that's the first actual term zombie that enters the Western canon, and it's about like Haitian voodoo and
right.
people coming back from the dead. So I will posit that zombies, as we now know them, as like mindless, shambling
as
creatures,
reanimated corpses, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Reanimated, mindless corpses.
Because the zombies in that are not actually dead, correct?
In which one? In the Haitian one?
Yeah.
I don't think that, maybe, I don't know.
I think
it's more of like a magic voodoo type thing.
And I think
like kind of dark Africa type story.
Right, and I think that most of those legends kind of have this idea that I'm not going to kill you and reanimate you. I'm going to put a spell on you that puts you completely under my control.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
They they give them some kind of psychotropic drug and a sedative, and then like there's already a cultural expectation, and then they bury him alive and pop him out.
Right.
And then the person's like, well, I'm in a stupor,
and
I just came out of a grave. I guess I'm this guy's servant. And then I would add, I Am Legend would be potentially a contender. However, it does come 3 years later. It comes in 1954.
Right.
And I would put I Am Legend. Granted, I'm splitting hairs here, but I would say I Am Legend is not the prototypical vampire novel. That would be Dracula. But a vampire novel, which I'm going to put in a different. Or actually, they're kind of zombie vampires. Now that I think about it.
Well, yes, I think I tend to think of it more as a vampire novel. I actually just read that for the first time.
Yeah,
I've seen obviously the Will Smith film, which deviates.
I like Will Smith, but whenever he's in any book or film adaptation of a book, he might as well just piss on the grave of the author.
It's pretty different.
iRobot was terrible.
You know what? Here's the thing. I would have actually liked I Am Legend if it was called something else.
Yeah.
If it was just like we're not gonna associate this with the original book, because I enjoyed the story. Thought the story was pretty good. I've also seen the what I think is the original adaptation of the Richard Matheson novel, which is
it's like kind of Twilight Zone. It's black and white.
Yeah, The Last Man on Earth, which was Vincent Price.
Oh, okay.
Very good, actually.
Yeah.
For a film of that time, it's very good, and it's much closer to the book.
Very much so.
Yeah, but yeah, I would call I Am Legend a vampire novel.
Yeah. So I think this one is the granddaddy of zombie lore as we now know it. In the Walking Dead, Dawn of the Dead, Romero kind of strain of zombies.
Well, and it's one of the most fascinating things about the book, in my opinion, is that the zombie persona, as we understand it today, is literally split between two groups: the blind people and the Triffids. And so the malicious carnivorous side of the zombie, and even the sort of aggregating force, because of course they later on and towards the end of the book they come in droves and surround the house, and it's very zombie like.
Right.
But the blind people are also very zombie like in a lot of ways. Some of them maliciously, a lot of them
shambling throng.
Yeah,
there's a kind of like
absolutely
group hunger, which manifests as this like panic and Giselle.
A panic that turns to listlessness, by the way, as time goes on, and they're starving and they're getting weaker and weaker, but they're still there in these gigantic groups. They probably would look like zombies, and move like zombies. It's such a fascinating book. In some ways, I think it kind of it almost is too good in the sense that everything that follows it is a much simplified version of that set of themes.
You know what? Actually, like the only zombie book that I can recall that really stands out in my mind is something that I enjoy is The Girl with All the Gifts. Very possible we will cover that book. I would love to. I think it's a phenomenal work of fiction. But I'm thinking, other than The Girl with All the Gifts, which is a great book, I would generally prefer to watch zombie stuff rather than read about it. I think the executions of it tend to be better cinematically than in terms of fiction, or in terms of written fiction. And I don't know, is there anything that really jumps out at you as something comparable?
I would say I enjoy, obviously, the cinematic version is preferable in some senses, although I will say I watched The Walking Dead through season 6 or 7, I think.
I don't think even The Walking Dead has continued watching The Walking
Dead.
It's The Watching Dead. I don't know, we can come up with some really good puns.
Yeah, I think I began to lose a little bit of my appreciation for it, but also The Walking Dead just it takes an already bleak subject and it's almost as if someone is saying, let's see how far we can ratchet this. Yeah. How bleak can we make it? And there comes a point where even I am sort of like, I got to put this down for a little while and watch an episode of Friends or something. But that being said, as far as books go, there have been some notable ones that I've enjoyed. I really liked Stephen King's book Cell.
Okay. That's what you told me about that. Yeah.
It's its own kind of zombie type novel. I don't honestly think I've read too many of them.
So I think it's mostly cinematic, but it works well, right?
Yeah. But I also think that I think that what works well cinematically is the zombie. I think what works well in terms of fiction is all of the attendant emotional issues that arise leading up to there being something like an apocalypse, and then following that. Everything that made you who you are, the person who somehow magically missed the bullet that hit almost everyone else in the world, and then how you can maintain that for as long as possible.
Yeah.
And I think that it can be played out cinematically well. It is in some cases, but I also think that there's a lot of ground that can be covered in the words of a book that I think that might be able to tap a little deeper into that.
So I want to jump back into the appeal of zombies in a minute, but first I don't want to lose sight of the Day of the Triffids specifically. I would say, in terms of looking at the themes that are explored in this book, it seems to me that the main theme, and it's a plot-heavy book, but the main theme to me is the conflict between necessity and morality. This is played out throughout the book of this. So Beadley, who is the leader of the group that eventually goes to the Isle of Wight, Beadley is a pragmatic utilitarian. Right. So he does not care. And he's at the beginning of one of these procedural British meetings where they decide to all sit around and talk. I don't think it's Beadley specifically. Maybe it is, but there's like an older professor who's kind of like explaining to everybody what's going to happen.
I think is it a professor or a cleric? I thought it was maybe a priest or something. It might be, but I don't remember.
Either way, this like genial old guy is kind of like, by the way, everybody, we're probably going to have polygamy. Because we're going to need to crank out as many sighted babies as we can, and it actually, this I think makes it's being set in the 50s slightly better. Several people are like, I don't want any part of that. Like there's one character, Miss Durant, who's the group prude, who like Beadley goes off to form his like pragmatic commune, and she goes off to form her like puritanical commune,
right?
And wants to make it both as her as moral as could be within her Christian framework, right? So she's wanting to be altruistic, but also very, very uptight, prudish, morally upright, that kind of thing. So as a result, like, not only are they not practicing polygamy, they're also inviting in literally any blind person they can, and they get waterlogged, and eventually they all die out. Because so the protagonist comes back looking for his girlfriend, and disease is struck, and there's so many people that they weren't able to keep up with the hygiene, and it just like killed everybody.
Which that's another thing. It isn't just that they couldn't keep up with hygiene. There is, in addition to blindness, in addition to carnivorous man-eating like zombie plants, there is also a plague. That strikes, which that's what leads the main character Bill to eventually come to the conclusion that that a lot of this might have been set up in the first place, because he believes that there are satellites in space that probably, whether intentionally, accidentally, maybe one of them was hit by the meteor shower, released, all of these just deadly diseases that then come through and just wipe out huge chunks of what's left of the population.
Which would be bad enough on a regular Sunday.
Yeah.
But when you add in all these other things.
John Wyndham does not give these characters an easy out at all.
And I say the characters are reasonably optimistic, all things considered.
Yeah.
Like they're not, like you read like a Cormac McCarthy novel. Like a Cormac McCarthy novel, everybody's like,
dark.
About 3.5 feet from suicide. Every single character in there. This one, we're still in like 50s, like all the science fiction writers, like kind of on some level, like the competent, plucky guy.
Right.
Like they all like the can-do guy.
Yeah.
And Bill Mason's a can-do guy.
For sure.
He's like, breaking into libraries, reading books. He's reading books on Venus flytraps. I'm going to beat him. Yeah. It's me versus the world.
He's very similar to the protagonist in I Am Legend.
Yeah.
In that sense, and in fact, almost exactly the same, because they're both sort of biologist types, and that was a very probably a very prescient thing on Wyndham's part to place heavy importance on the concept of biologists being important. But I think, by the way, to go back to McCarthy for a second, my favorite, I think, post-apocalyptic novel of all time is The Road.
It is probably the best written and the most chilling.
Stunningly good. It's so dark.
I was about to say, it is the best portrayal of a world without light that I have ever read.
Yeah.
Before I lose sight of the moral the necessity versus morality bit, Wilfred Coker, I think, is a really interesting character in this book. Because Coker, who is the chaotic good character. So like if we're using D&D terminology, just to make sure we're hitting every single every bit of our Virgin bingo card, we're almost gonna hit bingo, or it spells out VIRGI. So like Beadley would probably be like what is it, neutral, good neutral, or something like, or no, he'd be lawful neutral. He is a regimented person without a heavy moral agenda. He's concerned with outcome and pragmatism, right? So lawful neutral. Whereas Coker would be like chaotic good. Coker does not. Coker is concerned with the full extent of the people around him. And in the first showdown of the entire book between any two groups of people is between Coker and Beadley.
Right.
Beadley has organized all of the sighted people he can find in London, and he's planning to leave because London's clearly going to be infested with rats, disease, hunger, starvation, all these terrible things. He's going to get out. They're going to go find a chateau and hole up there. And Coker is like, what are you doing? You can't, you all have sight. Like, there's all these, and he's literally leading these chains of blind people, and to try and keep everybody together, and ends up capturing the protagonist and Josella. And he eventually comes around where he basically realizes, bit off more than I could chew.
Right.
Doesn't give up his morality. He doesn't become like a morally ambiguous character, but he does become a tad bit more concerned with methodology and implementation.
Yeah, for sure. I actually think that Coker is probably the most fleshed out character in the entire novel.
Yeah.
He also has, even just starting out, which we don't learn this about him until a little ways in, but
he's a criminal, isn't he?
He's a criminal.
Yeah.
He's also he's a social chameleon. So if you just meet him on the street, he has this presentation of, oh, all right, Governor, I don't have no learning me, that kind of thing. But he can immediately flip and start quoting, Shelley and Shakespeare, and put on, whatever hat he needs to have in a situation, he'll put that hat on. And so when you couple that ability, which is fascinating for a character to have to begin with the character arc of Coker, which is again, I think the most fleshed out in the whole book. He really does go from the pragmatist who could be a bad guy to ultimately, I think at the end of the novel, he's a very good guy. Yeah. I actually don't think that the chaotic part, I think by that point has actually left him behind. It seems that he finds purpose in moving the needle back out of the red for humanity. Right. And as a result of that, he seems to tap into something inside of himself that was always there, but he never quite could get it.
Well, and we can infer as well. I think that pre-calamity, he's probably a Les Mis style criminal, is my guess. Is he's probably, stealing bread for the hobo down the street with no legs. Right. Like he's probably doing that kind of thing.
I've got a British accent even though I'm in France.
Yeah. Exactly. So, he does get on board with him. And then like the extreme version of this would be, I don't think he's ever named, but he's, I believe, a redhead. I believe he's the fascist ginger. He's not called such.
Oh,
but there's a dark character who's about like power and doesn't care.
Yeah.
He
is named. I don't remember the name off the top of my head.
I'm going to call him. I'll call him the fascist rather than the ginger.
Yeah.
Because if I'm wrong, I don't want people to infer that I hate. But when I lived in Scotland,
we all know that you hate
because Scotland doesn't have ethnic groups. They're minorities, redheads.
Right.
So that's I don't want to anger them. But we're introduced to the fascist character. I'll call him the baddie, so we're being technical here. We're introduced because the plague has already struck, and Bill is part of this work gang that he's been impressed on through Coker, where he's the sighted guy for a squadron of 15 people or whatever.
Right.
And we see the disease is spreading, and the baddie sees a guy stumble and fall and just leans over and shoots him in the head.
Right.
And that might make sense pragmatically, but we do not get the impression that he's going, listen, Bob, I'm so sorry. This is for the good of the book. Truly, I will remember you, and I will sing. It's just bang. Are there no constraints here? And it's
time
1951, so the British people still own handguns. Time to go ahead and shoot this guy. And then he pops up at the very end, where at the end of the book, Josella and Bill have reconvened. They're now living in this house with the blind couple.
Right.
It's their house. Yep. But they've formed this little commune. They've adopted a girl, Susan, that Bill finds in his travels, and they've had their own children. So they've got this kind of little community going, and they're constantly being surrounded by these horrifying Triffids, which have proliferated at a numerous level. But the baddie shows up, and we've caught glimpses of his society along the way because they've been in Brighton,
right?
And at one point, Bill drives by Brighton, and all the roads are blocked, and there's a sign that says "Go away."
They put up a wall.
Yeah,
and they shot at him.
There's a gunshot noise or something. So they've attempted to cloister themselves, and they've apparently survived. And the baddie shows up and basically goes, "Oh, good, you're here. Okay, we're the official British government.
Yeah,
and so you need to fall into line. And what we're going to do is you've got a nice little operation here. It's working very well. We are going to give this to you in perpetuity. You will be the regional, some title. And Bill actually goes it sounds like feudalism. And he's like, yeah, it's basically feudalism. Yeah, it's basically feudal. Yeah, so this will be your estate. We have a lot of additional blind people. We're going to send you 20 to 30. And, just, as long as you've got sufficient pluck and good organizational skills, you can make it work.
Just close your eyes and think of the queen.
Yeah. And also we're going to take your daughter. We're going to take Susan as just a good, just to make sure, she's an able-bodied woman. We can't have too many women in one place, and also just ensures good behavior. And then we'll go on our merry way. And Bill facilitates the downfall of this guy, puts sugar in his car trunk, gets everybody drunk, and then escapes and leaves them to die. Yeah. Which seems very fitting. In the context of the book, you're like, I am glad that these people are being purged.
Yeah.
They do not seem to be the kinds that we want to have. But they would represent the far, almost the gleeful
cessation of morality. Like they're not even just getting rid of it. They never really wanted it to begin with.
Right.
And now that society is gone, they can do whatever they want.
Yeah, these are clearly the people who are earlier in the book when you have this kind of dichotomy presented between what Beadley wants to do and what Coker wants to do. You are looking at two people who are both out for the good of mankind.
Yeah.
At the end, these guys just want power.
Right.
They just want power. And I will say, not that Wyndham, could have known this because, of course, he wrote the first zombie novel, but I will say it was very refreshing to read a novel of this sort, of the apocalyptic sort, especially zombie-esque sort, where the military isn't immediately the bad guy.
Right.
Like, they are, and they come in, but they don't come in really, like, in full force until the very end of the book. And so it's not that there's anything wrong with that trope, but it is a trope.
I wonder if that's a British thing, because
no, it's all over American stuff too.
No, the other way. I mean, like being exempt from that, because the Girl with All the Gifts, which is a wonderful zombie film, or I'm sorry, well, both now, a film and a movie. The Girl with All the Gifts is primarily from the perspective of a group within the aegis of the rump government, which has survived, and you never meet any of the go alone, do it yourself British people, living by themselves in the crags and things, but they hate them because they view them as these very insubordinate, obstinate people who keep screwing stuff up and won't get on with a program, which is so different than every zombie film I've ever seen in America. Because in America, it's always the top-heavy military that either doesn't care, is going to leave you to die, or is going to herd everybody into a very tight, confined room. And this seems like a good idea with with a zombie outbreak. We'll put everybody in a tiny room, and then we'll just leave for a few minutes. Whereas the British lore has a little bit more respect for the state.
I think that there are, with notable exceptions, such as 28 Days Later, which is...
where the military is very much a bad guy.
Very much the bad guy, yeah. I think there may be something to that. I don't know. I'll have to...
Okay, well, so this brings into another thing of just the what is so captivating about zombies and zombie genre. Why is this something that has it has become its own phenomenon? I mean, it is its own whole genre. If we go back to 1951, there's no zombie genre. There's clearly a zombie genre now.
Right.
And I was thinking about I think it's multifaceted, but the two things that really stand out to me are, I think that all of zombie films and zombie books effectively become a lawless kind of Old West anarchy. There's something appealing about that, of all of the characters are now liberated to be completely morally and legislatively free to do how they see, right? There's no longer any type of all external authority is gone. There's something appealing to that, where we're like, what would I do if I could smash a window and go get all of the, all the mayonnaise I want,
and conversely, what would I do if I wasn't inclined to do that, but everybody else out there who's left is in a potential
I'm
danger
the one remaining city ombudsman who truly cares about zoning regulation, and I don't care how many zombies there are. You can't have I think that's a big part of it. I also think that a big part of it, and I would be... No, I'm about to argue against myself. I think a big part of it is that, say what you want about a post-zombie world, it's not boring. There's very little room for the mundane, right? So I feel like all zombie books and zombie films are very much in opposition. You're breaking out of the cycle of going to a 9-to-5 job and worrying about student loan debt. All of that's gone, right? So I think that's part of it. That said, though, I feel like...
Yeah, come to think of it, I'm actually kind of hoping a zombie apocalypse breaks out soon.
But we also didn't... I mean, we got into zombies when we were in college. But maybe it's just anybody that has a routine that they want to... Maybe there's some part of human beings that just wants to break out and live in chaos. I don't know.
I think there's something to that. Yeah. I have a couple of thoughts on it. First of all, this is more of a mechanical sort of nuts and bolts thing. If we can consider this to be the first zombie novel, or zombie genre
the
type
prototypical
novel. Yeah, prototypical. This is in 1951. Okay? Around 5 years before he publishes this book, the world discovers for the very first time in human history that it can destroy itself. That's something that had never been, that wasn't even a real part of the collective consciousness prior to the nuclear age.
Jesus might come back.
Yeah, right.
But that's Jesus' business. It has nothing to do with whether the King of France decides to release enough catapults.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that part of what you're seeing with apocalyptic fiction is that it's an outgrowth of genuine apocalyptic fears.
Right.
I mean, in 1951, kids are getting under desks in American cities to practice drills. Not that would have done anything at all other than just you would have had a ton of kneeling skeletons, but like
but we want pious skeletons because we live in America. We want the skeletons to be proper Methodists.
Put your head between your legs and kiss your ass goodbye. But I think that's part of it. I think that's a big part of it. Because you do, I mean, they correlate. Like the correlation isn't necessarily causation, but come on. That's where you start to see apocalyptic.
You think about, so to go back to Frankenstein, Frankenstein's not about mass death.
Right.
Frankenstein is about from my, I'm assuming I read it when I was in high school. From my retrospective analysis,
if it's been that long, I highly recommend you reread it. It is a fantastic novel.
But Frankenstein, I think, is dealing with they're what, 18th century or 19th century, early 19th century. They're dealing with this kind of technology is going really fast. Like, what's up with this? And it's sort of the fear of we have gone too far. We're playing God now. In fact, isn't it the modern Prometheus is the subtitle, the other title, right? Yeah. So there's this fear that we're playing God. Whereas the zombies, it's not about playing God. It's about everybody's dead. I like that. There's a kind of subconscious projection of some sort of death landscape that we can comprehend.
Right. So I think that's got to be a huge driver. The second thing that I thought of, when I was a kid, my favorite book was Robinson Crusoe, and I read it over and over and over again, and I fantasized about it nonstop, and I wanted to be shipwrecked on a deserted island. And I didn't think much about my motivations for that at the time, but I've thought about it in subsequent years. The whole idea there, and I think your idea of an end to boredom really ties into this. But also not just an end to boredom, but an end to a certain brand of responsibility.
Right. There's no external responsibility.
Yeah, there's responsibility.
There's no debt to anyone else.
Right. Yeah. Unless there's someone in your charge, and at that point, that it takes on a new life.
Now it's bonding and innovating. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. But the concept of survival, which is what Robinson Crusoe is all about. Is really I think a seminal part of the post-apocalyptic tale.
Right.
The concept of there is a certain victorious feeling that we can get. It's like a burst of endorphins every time that our hero narrowly avoids getting eaten by the zombies, or manages to MacGyver some takes 2 or 3 different things and turns them into some useful tool that in a lot of cases is ironic that it's working. Like, these are things that are very satisfying on a fictional level to us because we put ourselves in the characters, in the place of the character. We imagine ourselves doing those things. We imagine ourselves being clever. We imagine ourselves being fast or a good shot or whatever it is that the character does. And then we can inhabit that endorphin rush.
I think you're right about that. I think there's definitely something about the survivability of it, right?
Yeah.
So I enjoy going camping. And it's not lost on me that I am paying money to do what my ancestors had to do. But we both grew up in Oklahoma. Yeah. I don't know when your family came over. My family literally couldn't find trees, so they dug a hole inside of a hill and lived in a man-made cave in western Oklahoma for a while. for if I were to go back in time, I'd be like, I'm doing really well, so I was able to buy a good sleeping bag so that I could hang out outside. It would be like, what? Why? What is air conditioning? Have you cured polio? Oh my God, tell us about polio. Right? So like there is this like this weird capacity, which makes sense. We're still apes, right? We're apes. We have all of these instincts that get activated. It makes us feel alive. Right. I think there might be something to that. I also think on that note, then, and I think your insight that there's a visceral proxy thrill of surviving is a very, very salient one. And everything I'm going to say is secondary to that. But a subset of that is there seems to be a fear of infection, which plays a role in zombie films that hits some chord in us. Yeah. Fear of infection. Fear of cannibalism seems to be a thing as well. Yeah. Or fear of getting eaten, right? Right. Again, very primordial. I'm afraid of getting eaten by a bear or whatever. It's particularly gross and like perverse if it's a fellow human, but that fear of being devoured. All of which primordial survivability. Yeah.
By the way, I think you're actually hitting the nail more closely on the head even than I did, because you are talking about everything in there absolutely ties directly to the primordial animalistic nature that is still somewhere inside of our, despite all of our advances and all of our abstract thinking and all of that, there is still that core of sort of instinct. And I think you're strumming the right tune here. So please keep up.
Well, those are the main ones I have. There is one that I'll ask you about, because this is not, I don't think primordial. It would be more medieval, but like a recurring feature of zombie lore, which includes the Day of the Triffids. It includes Dawn of the Dead, probably as the apotheosis of it, is the siege. And like there's something that lights up in my head about it. I don't know what it is. So Dawn of the Dead is my favorite zombie film, and I watch it every year. Like I watch that, Groundhog Day, and Anchorman.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
I love that thing. And then also weirdly, I haven't played it in about a year now, but Age of Empires 2, which is one of two video games I still play.
Right.
There's something like I will line up these massive bulwarks. And I love having the enemy slam into it, and we will fight you on the beaches.
Let me very quickly break in here and tell the audience. So Andrew and I, in our younger days, and also presently, although we haven't played it in a while.
Certainly at the old folks' home.
Yeah, almost definitely.
In our latter days, we're going to be watching The Office
and taking
taking pharmaceuticals and playing Age of Empires 2. It's going to be pretty fun.
We played that, and one of the first times that I played against you, because I had played it a ton all the way back to high school when it was Age of Empires 1. I thought I was good at this game until I played Andrew Heaton, and I will never forget the first time I played you, and you were the Persians, and you
this is my want.
Stormed my city with a mass of elephants that just shattered my walls and broke me to pieces, and there was nothing but my wailing in abject just horror as I lost spectacularly that game.
That was my quarterback moment.
Yeah, it was.
That was my moment where the team carries me around on their shoulders. But to pull it back, I do. Yeah. There is I don't know why. I don't know what it is that I love about sieges. Because in AoE 2, I will purposefully maneuver myself into a position where I will be under siege, because I enjoy the scenario of being at the ramparts fighting off the barbarians so much. Right. And I think I really like that about Dawn of the Dead, because they're in a mall the whole time, and reading Day of the Triffids when they're surrounded by it. I'm like, do you think it's just is it because the stakes are so high now that survivability mechanism's kicking in? Is it do we develop some weird allele in 1300 that's managed to proliferate since the advent of castles?
Oh, I am sure you could tie this entirely back to a primordial state. I'm not sure what it is. I'll ask you this though: you enjoy being sieged, but do you enjoy the moment where someone breaks through your wall? Because if not, and I enjoy the concept of the siege as well, I hate it when somebody breaks through my wall. What I really like is a successful hold off against the siege, and I think that what you would tie that back to there is the concept that. Again, it's another one of those victories. It's just another, our character was fast enough. Our character managed to slip out
against all odds.
Against all odds, our character built or found a way to put himself into a protected space that is strong enough to keep whatever it is that's trying to kill him at bay. And if you can throw ingenuity on top of that and say, yeah, but he had to also build it. He had to actually put it together. He had to
fortify it. There was some engineering
it.
involved.
Yes. If you can add that to it, I think you get a double whammy.
Nice. Good. All right.
Yeah.
Whew. Okay, good. Well, we managed to loop in Dungeons and Dragons and Age of Empires 2.
All that remains is Star Trek. That's all we got to do.
Somehow evaded Star Trek. But if we were quilting, that's probably a terrible metaphor. I dropped that analogy. We managed to have a bunch of things in there.
I think that one of the things that struck me about the book, and you mentioned at the top of this podcast that you read this and thought, oh, this could have been written 5 years ago. It does really, really hold up. And not just because the guy is British and talks like a British person. It's a really good book that holds up in a lot of ways. You could see this happening in 1980, pre-cell phone, but it's a fairly modern concept.
Although honestly, it wouldn't have made any difference because the cell phone towers aren't being manned by anybody. Anyway, continue.
That's true. Yeah. But they would have been mentioned, I guess.
They would have had a pocket calculator for the
they would have had a smartphone that they then used to crack walnuts or something because it would no longer be useful for anything else.
Yeah.
So, but one of the things that really struck me, and I'm not a person who is, I don't go into a book or film or anything demanding that it meet my standards of social norms or sexism or any of that. But I will say one of the things that I noticed is this novel was written in 1951, and the female character is in many ways as much of a badass as the male character.
Yeah.
And she's not given short shrift.
Yeah.
I think there's a couple of maybe incidents where she's she
is introduced as a damsel in distress.
A bit.
That is our introduction to her, where she's been captured by a blind person who literally has her on a chain,
right,
and is using her as like a seeing eye dog.
Right, but even she, in the course of this, kind of a moment of self-awareness of the book itself, even she is saying, I was so stupid to let him get me like that. Right. I'd have probably killed him in another day or two.
Right. Yeah,
and it's you would have, because she was, she was a survivor. I like that. I like that there's a bit of the damsel in distress too.
And she's also got, as I recall, she's got a certain amount of risque to her as well, because her pre-Triffids life is
she wrote a book about
she's
sex.
A best-selling novelist. She is writing the 50 Shades of Grey every day.
Yeah.
And so she is not a social pariah, but questionable.
Yeah.
And so she's not just tee-hee.
Right.
Oh no, I'm going to faint.
Yeah, she's definitely, she's a progressive, if I can use that word in this modern era. She's very progressive for her time.
Yeah.
So I appreciated that because for two reasons. One, it's the 1950s, and I think that it was a good move in terms of fiction. And then the other side of that is it's not ham-handed. It's not it's not crammed down our throat that she's a smart, sassy, independent woman. It's just there. She just is. And I really appreciated that about the book.
Yeah, I agree with you. That holds up. It's one of the reasons that I just assumed it was from 6 years ago.
Yeah.
If it had been, if the narration had been,
if it had been Mad Men.
Yeah. Well, I think a less, I think sci-fi a lot of the times is actually quite good about this.
Yeah.
And I think sci-fi tends to be ahead of the curve. But if it were written by another author at that time, there's a good chance that it would have involved Bill looking out across the alley and seeing the most beautiful woman in the world, and and it would have just
enormous breasts,
just enormous breasts that chafed against her thin, and there would have been a whole lot of nipple dialogue,
right?
And then it would have as we get introduced to her, there would have been zero personality.
Furthermore, if you or I had written this book,
all we do is discuss nipples. But to our credit, we do it with men too.
Yeah,
and we have odd combinations of nipples.
And we try to be tasteful.
That's true. It's all, but it would have involved the 50s slap and pull yourself together. That That never happens. She's always just as emotionally stable and capable of working and everything else as anybody else.
Right.
She's
and emotionally unstable as everyone else as well. I mean, this is again, it's a beautiful mixture, I think, for a character. She's, she loses her style, her cool a few times throughout, but so does the main character. It's everybody's doing this because the world has come to an end.
Yeah. And on that note, I think we can end the inaugural Interstellar Book Club. Jennings, thank you so much. This was a really fun chat.
Thank you for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I look forward to our next one.
Each week, fellow comedian Nick Sperduti and I go perform comedy on some world along with our Wookiees. And we report back to you about what that was like. And this week we can't do it because we've been friggin' quarantined. We've been quarantined, and we've had at least, 8 gigs, maybe more, 8 gigs, all canceled, all gone.
At least, yeah.
And a bunch of them were going to be super fun.
I was super looking forward to Neverland. I felt really good
Neverland
about
was
that.
going to be fun. That was going to be good. We were going to do the Pirate City and the Lost Boy place. We were going to do a twofer.
I got to be honest with you. This is super disappointing, but I'm glad that we're going through it together.
Yeah.
What?
Well, okay, so...
What's that?
Okay, so yes, I am very happy that I am quarantined with you, my good friend Nick, and also your wife Megan, and AJ-19, your protocol droid, and 7 Wookiees that owe a life debt to you, as well as Joe Blobe. And I'm grateful that I happened to be over at your apartment when the quarantine happened. But it's, you probably are very used to this and so haven't noticed it. But 7 Wookiees and a protocol droid and a Gungan and a married couple living in a 2-bedroom New York apartment that's maybe 500 square feet. Kind of tight, Nick. Kind of tight. And it's just been a little
First of all,
hard for me.
I don't appreciate you tearing down my living situation in the middle of this scenario, but okay, I will accept that.
It's fine. It's a nice apartment. I like the
But
apartment.
I will say this. I've noticed.
Okay, yeah. So you get it.
Yes, I get it. But here's the thing, Heaton. At least we're together for it, number 1.
Yeah.
Number 2, none of this has been easy for me generally. This makes it way worse. Okay, I'm not even supposed to go to grocery stores and stuff. They want you to kind of completely stay home.
Yeah.
They might put a ban. I mean, financially, now we're taking a huge hit because all of our gigs are getting canceled.
Right.
I mean, I had several flights that I had to cancel.
Yeah, we got to eat
cruise.
that. I mean, we get to redirect the flights. Like we had a flight to Hogwarts. They're at least going to let us have a waiver for that. But all the same, I was counting on that $1,000 from Hogwarts.
You and me both, buddy. You and me both. And I just want to say that waking up in this quarantine situation with a testy Andrew Heaton ain't no spring flowers either, buddy boy.
Yeah, I'm not what you call a morning person. And
you're more of a mid-afternoon, hopefully, person.
I am a mid-afternoon, hopefully person, and not real easy to sleep. I mean, you have those. I'm sharing a bunk bed with my Wookiee girlfriend, which is nice, but Wookiees snore. Did you know that? All Wookiees.
Yeah, I do.
All Wookiees snore. I think I speak for everyone in the apartment when I say Monopoly is getting a little tense. Monopoly's getting a little tense. I think we're all getting a little bit of cabin fever. We're all a little cooped up, and really happy that you have collected multiple board games. Like, so happy that we can pass the time there. Longara Jr.'s cheating. There, I said it. He is cheating. Every time I go to the bathroom, I come back and he's got 4 hotels. There weren't hotels there previously.
He's a doctor. He wouldn't do that.
Oh, really?
I trust people. I intrinsically trust people, Heaton. Maybe that's a vital flaw in the overall narration of it. Narrative of it. But quite frankly, maybe you're cheating. Yeah, there, I said it.
How dare
maybe
you?
You're the one who's cheating. Because you know what? You never seem to win, do you, buddy boy?
Okay,
but
no,
you
hold on.
to get close.
Wait a minute. Hold on, real
close
quick.
Close enough to cheat. Yeah.
Nick, I know what you're alluding to, and I didn't cheat. What I did was I infused the monopoly board economy with quantitative easing. Through my own time and effort, I reproduced the currency of that board game and introduced it into the local economy to try and help all of the struggling monopoly companies and restaurants and theaters and things that were suffering because of a consumer downturn. Now, it just so happens that I, being the bank, received all of that money. But if I spend that money, it eventually trickles down into the economy. And so it's not cheating, Nick. It's saving the day. I'm a hero. Anyway, we're getting away from the important thing that I want to talk to you about.
Heaton. I'm sorry. I was
Nick,
damn near out on my feet.
Nick, it's never fun to have this conversation. I've had this conversation 2-3 times in my life. It's never fun. But when we run out of food, we have to make some hard decisions.
We can get deliveries and stuff still, I'm sure.
I don't want to be the bad guy here. I'm just saying we should go ahead and pick who we're going to eat if it comes to it.
Joe Blow.
Yes, Joe Blow. Good. Well, that was a lot easier than I thought it was going to be. So we all agree that we're going to eat the Gungan?
We already voted on that. You weren't here for that vote? We voted on that a little while ago.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good. I think we should also just acknowledge that if somebody has some kind of habit that helps them unwind, say taking a 2-hour bath every night, that they should be able to do that unfettered for the good of the apartment.
Listen, we have a sign-in and sign-out sheet in the restroom.
Uh-huh.
It is there on purpose. You have to pick your time for when you're going to take a shower. The limit that it's been since we started with the Wookiees, 25 minutes. That is a limit. That's a hard limit, okay? You can't just get Chewbacca to get a spot and then take it and use it and be like,
I don't see why I can't have the other person just give me their spot. It's the same amount of water. It's the same amount of heat and time.
The spot. You're using the spot. That's an illegal maneuver.
Okay, well, this brings me up to the other rather difficult conversation we need to have, Nick. We're acting like this current scenario is a situation in which you're calling the shots simply because you own the apartment. But yes. I don't think that's fair. And I've been talking to the Wookiees, and we're going to have a apartment mayor election, and I am standing to run.
Are you trying to take over, Heaton? If you want to pay for the apartment every month, that's fine.
No, you're doing a great job with that. In these difficult times, Nick, it requires a certain amount of leadership and new, bold ideas
Pathos,
/ power to just ensure that everything is running okay. And, who am I? To ignore the multiple calls for leadership that have been issued my way by the people struggling in your apartment? I, for one, feel like I would be obviating my responsibilities to the group if I didn't throw my hat in the ring to run for mayor of your apartment over you and Megan.
Heaton, okay, fine. Listen, you want to run? You can run, buddy boy. But just know that I'm going to win. And then guess what? Rule number 1, no more monologues. We're over it. No more monologues. I'm done with that. Rule number 2, 25-minute baths or banishment into the unknown.
Whoa.
Yes, into the unknown where you will most likely get this disease.
Stakes just got real.
Yes, they did. Did they not? Now, you're getting me all fired up, but I'm going to tell you this, too. If you want to run for this, that's fine. But you don't know the code to the printer. So I don't know how good your posters are going to be.
Do you mean AJ? The protocol droid? He just has a Sharpie. Is that what you're talking about? Do I have to have a code to get him to make stuff for me now?
You have to get a code to actually get stuff printed from him, yes.
Okay.
And he won't tell you the code because he doesn't know it.
Well,
it's a secret code that I know.
No problem. Chewbacca's my campaign manager, and she's great at graphic arts, and she'll just make some good posters.
You know what? You want to do this? Let's do this right now.
I want to democracy this apartment because I believe in democracy.
Now. Megan, get the Sharpies. Megan, get the Sharpies and get the staplers. We're gonna get down votes. Somebody get a hat. Somebody give me a hat. We'll put all the votes in a hat.
Nick, I just want to say, I love democracy. And as soon as this crisis subsides, I will return power over to the people.
I have a feeling this is going to be a dictatorship coming really soon. All right.
Maybe.
grab
Okay.
my
We're going to
toast.
take a break while we tabulate this. Hello, Heaton here. Hey, listen. If you enjoy this show, do me a solid and rate it on iTunes or a platform of your choice. And if you've already done that, thank you. Why not tweet your favorite part of today's program out on the internet? My handle is @MightyHeaton, and I'd appreciate it, but you also might help find other people that like this program and introduce them to it. And since everybody's, staving off The Shining right now at home bored, they could probably use some peppy sci-fi stuff to get into, right? Okay, thanks. Well, that didn't go how I thought it was going to go.
My goodness.
I really thought it was going to be between you and me. I just sort of assumed that we would be the winners or the top candidates at least.
Well, I guess we didn't actually say
we
that
didn't,
it was just you and me.
We didn't count on the Wookiee vote being a block. And, long live Mayor of the Apartment, Edward Jefferson.
I don't. I mean, I guess, he was a Wookiee senator.
He was a Wookiee. Yeah,
he knew what he was doing.
I got to say this. He's got more credentials than you and I do as an elected official.
I didn't know he was going to use his agoraphobia as such a a strong running point.
I started crying.
Me too.
What a beautiful speech about how, he's afraid of big spaces, and at the same time he has a big space in his heart. I can't remember everything, but it was really touching.
Something like that.
Here's something that I didn't know about. He voted against the war in Iraq. I didn't know that Kashyyyk even voted on that, but he apparently at the time was a senator and thought it was a bad idea.
I got to be honest though, he did win by 30 votes.
That was strange because I'm not great at math, but there's top 7 Wookiees,
8, 9, 10, 11.
Gungan, that's 8. Protocol
12.
droid, which I didn't want to let vote because he's a robot, but we still did. That's 9, and then you. That's 12 people, right?
Yeah, and we let the iguana vote.
Yeah, that's 13. So
13.
It would appear that there's been something of an error to the tune of 15 to 17 votes.
Well, we said all votes were final.
Yeah, we could have done a better job with this. Also, did you notice how it seemed to me that there was a very strange, what do you call that? Gerrymandering, where everybody that lived in your bedroom got one vote, so you and Megan.
Yeah.
And the couch got a vote, which had a Wookiee on it. The bunk beds all got separate votes. The bathroom got a vote, but I wasn't in the bathroom in time to cast my vote. I got to
You got the visitor's vote.
Well, but it was non-binding because I didn't get to the poll in time. It just, I felt like there was, I don't want to say anything negative about our new and beloved mayor. I wonder if some other interested parties in this equation maybe rigged it a little bit.
I mean, it's certainly possible, but, I think he has now that I've seen it, I think he has the ability to lead.
You know what? I'll say this.
More than I was expecting.
I was really hoping to get that bath reform in and be able to take a 2-hour bath every night. And now I can because the new mandate is we all take a bath at the same time every night for 2 hours. Yeah. And we don't go through nearly as much water.
Here's what I'm going to say real quick. Gosh, I don't like to eat crow like this, but Heaton, I want to apologize for what we said before and during, for the slander campaign, and you're not a fart face asshole prick.
Thanks, man.
You're not. You're a beautiful person, and I love you. And I didn't mean to be so rude, and I and also that Photoshop of you in sprankles together, that was just a joke. I didn't mean it to be something that would get in your relationship's way either. It was just something that I was trying to stir up some controversy a little, Yeah. So again, I want to apologize. And
I accept your apology. And in that same spirit, Nick, I want to apologize for starting the rumor that you personally murdered JFK. That would it wasn't very likely based on when you were born that ever happened. Yeah. I know that I kept strongly insinuating that your wife, Megan, takes millions of dollars from the Koch brothers. That is also something that is not true. I regret implying that. I hope that didn't cause any problems for her in the apartment.
No, it's fine.
Yeah.
Thank you, though.
The bot swarm that your Twitter account got to the tune of 30,000 really angry Russian bots, that was good tactically, I think, for the campaign.
I think so.
But also probably caused you some stress, and for that I apologize.
I just want to say this. We did not agree on a clean campaign.
No.
We agreed that this was going to be ruthless.
Uh-huh.
And it happened within, I'd say, about an hour is what this all took. So I want to say to you, sir, well done.
And well done to you.
Thank you there. I do appreciate it.
And I guess I'll leave it there, Nick, because the new rules from Mayor Edward Jefferson are that we can only record podcasts for up to 20 minutes at a time. So I guess we got to go play Monopoly.
Yeah, actually, yeah. Oh, and then I'm a little pissed off, honestly, that he gets to be the top hat now whenever he wants.
Yeah.
That's actually the rule that bothers me the most.
And that he gets to employ eminent domain whenever he wants. I remain resolute against that.
Well, we can see what we can do. Maybe we can talk him out of it.
All right. I'll see you in
buddy.
30, 40 seconds for weeks.
See you later.
Weeks at a time. That's the show. Thanks for listening. Thank you, Josh Jennings, for both introducing me to that fantastic novel and then letting me barge into your apartment to talk to you about it, and then letting me sleep over in your guest room, and also not getting mad when I used up your toilet paper, or when I hid all of the remaining toilet paper for if and when I come over again. You're a swell bloke, Jennings. Thanks, Nick Sperduti, for yet another glorious sedentary adventure. We'll see you next week. Until then, tally-ho!